Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. In this video, we'll talk about the anima and the animus, and I'll give you a very brief overview. This will be a 5 to 10 minute video, so it'll be a very brief video. And there will be further videos where we'll discuss the concept in more depth, because I do think it's one of the most important or key concepts in Jungian theory, and there's a lot more to it than what I can touch upon today. But okay, let's get right into it. So what are the anima and the animus? So first of all, the anima and the animus are archetypes. That is, they're patterns of behavior. Now, let me say right off the bat, there are no anima and animus, whatever the plural is, per se. So you can't really say, oh, Megan Fox is the anima, right? Although I thought of her, right? But what you can say is that there is a pattern of behavior expressing in men and women, and we'll get to that in a second, that corresponds to us extrapolating, that enables us to extrapolate that there are these archetypal cores around which complexes within the unconscious revolve. So that, again, it doesn't mean, and this is a very, I can just say it over and over again, because people get this wrong all the time. It doesn't mean that you can say, oh, this is the anima, this is my anima. Well, no, you can't really say that. It is, what we're looking at here, the level of analysis we're looking at, is the ego's behavior in reality vis-a-vis its unconscious counterpart, and the forces in that unconscious that pull the ego, the ego being that which we behave as, let's say, very generically, that which we essentially see, right? Although that could also be the persona as an aspect of the ego, but then the ego goes a bit further than that. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say that which we see, the story that we tell of ourselves, and not only to others, but also to ourselves, ironically, right? So you already see a detachment between ego and me, it's very interesting. But the anima and the animus are essentially patterns of behavior within that structure. So you go through the world and suddenly something happens and you may say, oh, well, this is according to structure XYZ. And then again, you find, oh, this is an archetype that expresses here, and this may be the archetype of the anima or the animus, right, in that case. It's like a bird that suddenly builds its nest somewhere. Now it's springtime, birds start building nests in, our hedges. So it's like, oh, does the bird think about it? No, it's an instinct, right? And Jung thinks about the archetypes similar to instincts, just that they have a historical component, but we'll get to that in other videos. I'm digressing here. So the anima and the animus are such patterns of behavior. Now, in particular, the anima is the female side, you may say, of the male psyche, while the animus is the male side of the female psyche. Now, that doesn't mean the men don't have an animus. Not at all. Quite the contrary. We both have both, right? It's just that typically, in terms of you may even say culturalization or, socialization, the animus is more expressed in men and tends to be less expressed in women. Now, the animus stands for that which throughout the history of the world that we exist in, the history of the biological history, you may say, according to some theorists, has been expressed as male throughout that history. So that would be the animus. And the anima, on the contrary, that throughout the history would have been expressed as female, right? Or performed by women. However, we define that in modern society. Let's not get into that here. Now, the anima is obviously part of a bigger archetype, and that is the female archetype, or what Jung or later Erich Neumann would call the archetype of the Great Mother. Just like the animus is bigger of a part of a bigger archetype, and that would be the archetype or the complex of the great one, or the great human, even the hero, essentially, right? But there's der große Einzelne would be the German term, the great one, the great person, right? In the sense of the hero. And Now you can already see that the anima doesn't stand for itself, right? And we'll now get into the anima, because Jung's work is mostly focused on the anima expressing within his own psyche and male patient psyche. There's not so much about the animus. There's also stuff about the animals, and we'll talk about that maybe a bit later or in another video. But just looking at the time, let's get into the anima. So essentially the anima would be all that which as a man are the kinds of behaviors that as a man are located in your shadow. So the shadow is that which doesn't express in your, let's say, daily life. If you're very analytically thinking and disagreeable, to stay with the term from the Big Five personality model, right? Then essentially your anima would be sort of compassionate and agreeable and sort of warm, right? And that could be a typical description, right? The anima has a lot of expressions though. There's, as to all archetypes, there are two poles, right? A good pole and a bad pole, if you will. As to everything in Jung and everything in life, arguably, right? So you have the anima has a devouring side, right? A side, you see that expressed in images like, the mermaids that draw you into the water just to drown you so they can possess you forever kind of thing. Or the sirens that sing so beautifully, they pull you under, kind of these kinds of, so everything that's alluring to a man, you tend to get lost in it. It tends to not be good for you, at least from the vantage point of the ego. And that's very important to say because, and this now gets us to a very important point, which is the anima functions as the access point to the unconscious for the man, right? For the woman, typically, it's the animus that functions as the access point to the unconscious. The kind of I don't know, the vampire, if you will, maybe. The badass CEO that's a total douchebag, but you're kind of attracted to them, right? So it's not what you think consciously is best for you, but it is what provides the access point to your unconscious for you. And that is, if you're drawn into the water by a siren, what does the water represent? It represents precisely that, the unconscious, right? And you're drawn into that. It's not good for the ego, but for the greater personality, that seems to be something worth exploring. But beware and be careful, because just because something is unconscious or dark or whatever, doesn't mean you should jump right into that water. If you're not ready, you might as well die, and that's very, very important. And it, in life, of course, I watched this video the other day. It's like the worst thing you can do is have a child with the wrong person, which is quite obvious, I guess. But it's an interesting metaphor in this context, especially when it comes to desire. And so let's just one more word about desire and prohibition in this context, because we of course know from other psychoanalytic traditions, Freudian, Lacanian psychoanalysis, that the desire, and this is a lot more complex than the sentence I'm going to say, but desire arises at the intersection of the drive, so something you want to do or something you're prone to do, and prohibition, so when you're not allowed to do that, then you start desiring that. Now, in the context of the anima, it's obvious why the man would desire that anima figure and fear it, but that precise fear arises from somewhere. It arises from the opposition of the ego, the friction between the ego and that which it moves towards, right? And so that's why we're drawn towards it, but then also scared of it. Drawn towards it and scared of it. So that's very important to realize. And so I think in conclusion, what you should take away from this very brief video, which I put great effort to make brief, is that the animus represents masculine aspects within a woman. So the disagreeableness, suddenly someone is disagreeable, while the anima represents the feminine aspects of a man. And now, before we close this video, I want to place two notes here. One is, you can observe these unconscious complexes taking hold of someone. So Jung literally thinks of this as a spirit that's possessing someone, right? The spirit of the animus is possessing the woman when she suddenly gets all disagreeable. You're like, oh, how do you like this shirt? Oh no, that's terrible. And by the way, why wear shirts at all? And oh, how do you like this jacket? Oh no, that's terrible. It's like this disagreeableness. And I'm not saying that it's bad for a woman to be disagreeable. I'm not saying that at all. Same goes for a man. A man gets all compassionate and sort of, you'd say colloquially, you'd say soft and suddenly, whatever it is, you probably can imagine what I'm talking about. You'd say, oh, he may be possessed by the anima. And this is good because the ultimate goal, according to Jung, is integration, right? You want to become a whole personality, a personality that has expressed both aspects of its psyche within its ego. So the ego as the sort of incomplete center of the psyche, the subjective center of the psyche, which we create willfully, which is therefore incomplete, while the self that we want to move towards is the complete center of the psyche, right? The objective core that we live by, that we want to individuate towards, right? And that a crucial part of this individuation is the integration of the anima and animus functions. And so that's basically the takeaway, I think, from this video. And if you want to know more about this topic, I'll link some videos in the description. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, recommend this channel to your friends, and hit the like button. I greatly appreciate your support. Thanks very much.